It's the unofficial Red Sox Fantasy Campers podcast with Pickles and Double A.
Hi, this is Double A and Pickles with the unofficial Red Sox Fantasy Campers podcast. Today we have Kate Haynes, who is the archivist for the International Women's Baseball Center. Hi, Kate.
Hey, Angelina.
Thank you for being on the show today. I didn't realize your full role there until I started looking at the archives, and I was like, whoa. And then I looked at your background. So you actually do this for a living.
I have a background in libraries and archives with a similar background in specifically women's sports history. And so I do this for my real life and for my volunteer life.
So now I saw that you're a Blue Jays fan. I'm a big fan of Kevin Kiermaier. You guys got him from the Rays because I'm also a Rays fan.
We are actually planning a trip up in July to go to Toronto.
About the IWBC. How did you get involved? How did you hear about them? How did you get involved with them? Because I imagine archiving is a big job for that group.
Yeah, so I have been involved with them pretty much since their inception. I went to a symposium that October that was held at the Louisville Slugger Museum and kind of got involved that way. I tabled for them at that point. I actually was a student of the CEO, Kat Williams. Worked with her in both my undergrad and grad school. She cultivated me as a women's sports historian. And has kind of continued to be a great mentor and friend throughout all of this. So she's always tried to help keep me involved too. She knew my interest in, kind of continuing to learn about women's baseball specifically. And yeah, so I've tabled events for them. I've sold merchandise for them. I come and just use my youthfulness to help out at events. So I've been going to events since their inception. Now I actually sit on their board of directors. Be stepping off next month, but have been on their board for 2 years, and I've officially been their archivist for 4 years.
Wow. Okay.
And it's an interesting process because while we do have some physical space, we have some office space and whatnot at Rockford University. We don't have a lot of space, and so archives take up physical space. Mm-hmm. So while it is a very important part because we're trying to preserve the history, we want to preserve and conserve 3D objects. It's also a really interesting space because most of the organization is volunteers, and there's not necessarily, warehouses that, can hold these items that we would like to eventually have. So, I kind of play with that on what we can digitize so people have access to it because, it's the International Women's Baseball Center. We want people around the world to have access to items. And then, what I can do because I'm a volunteer and, some weeks, I could probably spend 10, 15 hours working on something. And
wow.
Some weeks I can't.
Now, how do you decide what goes in the archives?
That's a continued conversation, I think. So when you're looking at archives, you're looking at historically significant information, often that can't be replicated. So our first completely digitized collection was actually my research collection because I wanted, if I was going to screw something up, I would have rather it been my stuff. And so these were, pages of notes for writing my thesis, newspaper articles that I'd come across of the paper that I'd been writing. So you could see like the different aspects of it. So those are the types of things that you see in archives a lot of the time. That's a little bit different than like 3D objects that would appear in, say, a museum. Now, we want to keep those items as well, but preserving and conserving those are a completely different process. Something I will continue to learn about, but not something that I necessarily have an expertise in, something that is a lot harder to keep track of. Like we can keep boxes of paper. It's as long as, we hopefully don't flood or burn something. Those types of things are pretty easy to keep in pretty compact spaces where 3D objects, depending on how old they are, depending on the condition that we get them in, are a lot harder to store and keep in a way that we would still be able to use them or put them on display in the future, when we have a physical building.
Right. So I did see the movie for your 10-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. Somebody put like a nice movie together talking about what they would like to do did you put the movie together? That's why you're laughing. But like the design is beautiful. And I love how like the outdoors is incorporated, into the design. But how are you all planning to fundraise for that? And do you have like a date you think that you are going to have that?
So I do believe that there are plans for a capital campaign. That is something that is far beyond what I know a lot about. And I do know that it is a lot of money that, physical location, especially building from the ground up,
Right.
is just more money than like I can even wrap my head around. But I do know that like there are steps being taken, conversations being had with, possible groups of people that might want to invest. That being said, people can always donate to us. $5 isn't a lot, but it builds up if everybody does it. I don't believe that we still have a date, but we are at a point where we are working with, of course, an architect and a space designer and those types of people. And those are things that you kind of have to do kind of in the really early stages, because you need to be able to show people what those ideas may look like. I can't go to some millionaire and ask for, $10 million and just be like, take my word for it. So that's the board's at a point of like trying to get that information together and work at what those timelines might look like. But there's not currently a public capital campaign or anything like that going on.
Well, I'm just thinking your role as an archivist in a physical building would be much different.
Yes, so much different. At that point, it wouldn't be a position that could be voluntary. We've made a lot of great strides, where we just turned 10 years old a couple of weeks ago. And to be a nonprofit organization that started from nothing 10 years ago to have 2 full-time staff right now is amazing. And there is a lot of work to get to more full-time staff, which you would have to be able to support with a physical building, like we're looking at building. And an archivist would be one of those people.
Yeah, I would think that would be an important job. And then when you say you're archiving, are you like going back to like the beginning, like the first known times when we were playing baseball? Because I imagine now you're getting more stuff. It's probably easier to get current stuff.
Yeah, so we try to keep track of things that are being talked about in the news right now, knowing where those locations are. So you also have to deal with in archives, property rights and things like copyright. So you'll see, if you ever check out the archives page at our website and are browsing through some of our collections, you might not have access to something because, it's copyrighted, and we would love to give you access to it, but we would like to not get sued. And so, you kind of have that kind of back and forth, but knowing where that information is, getting to talk to you, Angelina, at Founders Day and learning about your podcast. We have resource pages to go, this is where you can find out more information. There are collections throughout the country that are usually more specified. There's a group of papers at Notre Dame from one of the owners of the Blue Sox. And so
Wow.
we're not ever going to have that information, but we want you to know that information exists and that you could, connect with it. So we have resource pages to kind of point people in the right direction. Right now, the way that I've been approaching archives is not necessarily going out and looking for information. That is just not something I have time to do. Somebody that would be full-time may be looking for information and figuring out how to gain access to it and intellectual property rights to it and things like that. That's not something that the IWBC is going to be capable of doing right now. What we are doing is looking at people that have offered to send us their collections, or, where we know things are. So again, like I stated earlier, our first collection that was fully digitized was my own personal research. We have worked on, of course, collecting our own documents as well. We create digital content. So we have a digital content collection as well, where you would find those videos that you saw in Founders Day.
Yeah, no.
And those types of things. But we also know that, say, our CEO she is by trade a researcher, has spent decades working on women's sports history, papers there to look through. She has 3 books on baseball published right now. So like the work that she did in that build up, the work she's continuing to do for her future books, that all would eventually come to us to be archived. It's, I can't just go, oh, I'd like to do this right now because I know how much stuff there's going to be. We had an author, Diana Helmer, who wrote Bells of the Ballpark in the 90s. She donated her collection. She was moving out of her house and she's like, this needs to be somewhere. So I've worked with that for the last couple of years because I don't have time to just sit down and work on it, 40 hours a week. We unfortunately lost another one of our founders in 2020. So we know that there's a collection of items there that have been glanced through by the CEO and have been worked on getting back to Rockford. I'm actually planning a trip to work in Rockford for a week.
Nice.
Coming up in April, where we can kind of look at those things and see if there's things that we need to prioritize. When you're looking at collections that could potentially date back to the 1940s, there is technology that you may find that you can't use anymore. I'm not thinking of stuff, quite back to 1940, but I do know that there's a collection of VHS tapes. And so prioritizing, figuring out how to digitize those items in a way that we're going to be able to continue to use while not necessarily destroying the originals, may go way up our priority list than, I have these boxes of papers and photographs that aren't necessarily going to deteriorate as quickly or lose the ability to read that type of stuff.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. But when I was in grade school, microfiche was a big thing. But you're right.
Microfiche is still a big thing in academic libraries.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have so I work at the University of Michigan in my day job, and we have an entire basement full of
wow.
It is not used a lot, but it is a really great way to keep compact things together. So yeah, you have to think about those things. I know that I have a couple of floppy disks in some of my collections.
God.
And to the point that because that technology in the technology realm is so far back.
Right.
I don't even know if there's anything even still on those disks because floppy disks we have discovered, in the years that we've moved on from that technology, were a little easier to erase than I originally thought. So, looking at those things and trying to figure out how we can use those in a way that's not going to damage the originals, but still be able to use that type of information for things like research in the future, or in planning our educational programming, which is also another major aspect of the IWBC, to show people that, women playing baseball is nothing new. They've been playing baseball as long as men have been playing baseball. And that is a really important thing for girls and women that are playing now to understand when they're getting that pushback of trying to be forced into softball, or, of course, you can't play baseball because you're a girl and girls don't play baseball. And I'm sure so many other things that even you guys have heard as fantasy campers, where I think I remember in a couple of your previous podcasts that you were talking about, people ask if you mean softball camp.
Yeah.
No, you want baseballs. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because some of those times we went in with Victor Rodriguez, the hitting coach for the Padres. We know him from camp, so he's taking us hitting, and we're like, "Do you know who this is?"
He's not teaching us how to hit softball.
He's not. It's really funny. But then I tell the Pickles, I go, "This is our life now."
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's really funny. All the contacts we've met, doing this fantasy camp just for fun. It's been unbelievable.
I grew up playing soccer and had a career-ending injury at 14.
Oh my gosh!
Just kind of couldn't deal with sports for a long time, and I happenstanced into Dr. Williams's. I think it was a women's history class my first semester of college, and one of the books that we read was about the league. And I had known about the movie. The movie came out the year I was born. So I had known about the movie, but I hadn't necessarily realized that it was based on a true story. you know, we would always catch it on TV. So you always watched it. Like, I had never seen the movie from beginning to end. And so I kind of got, you know, into that. And it was a way for me to connect with sport again in a way that I hadn't been able to since I had to stop playing sport. And I was already a baseball fan. I got taken on we had always been a baseball family. We would go up. My parents were, like I said, were Braves fans. We lived outside, about an hour and a half outside of Pittsburgh. So we'd go up about once a year to see the Braves play the Pirates. And, you know, I had really great memories of Three Rivers and then the opening of PNC and like all of these great things. But I got taken on a trip to Toronto in the 6th grade, got a tour of the Sky Dome at the time.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah.
And we ended up at a ball game. And I can and that's where I fell in love with baseball. We ended up at the middle 3 innings of a Yankees Blue Jays game. And the Yankees destroyed us 11-2.
We all hate that.
But something happened during that game. And I've been an avid Blue Jays fan ever since and have really re-fallen in love with the whole game of baseball. You know, in the last decade of more than decade now of working on history and reconnecting with sport.
Yeah, baseball is really fun. And I don't know, it seems like it's a generational thing, right?
Yeah.
It's something that we all can relate to. A lot of the other things people get involved in. I don't know, but I even just memories, like you're saying, you just like the memories that it sparks, you know, watching players, and I don't know. It's fun. I'm glad because the thing is, like, Pickles lives, 15, 20 minutes away from me. She's lived here for a few years. So there's not many other women I could talk to about baseball.
Yeah.
But here she is in town, and I never would have met her for baseball.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have people literally all over the world because of that.
Yeah.
Where, you know, I can reach out and be like, oh, hey, you know, what's going on in Australia? You know, what are you hearing about baseball? How can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what for, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and because the Red Sox and the Yankees are the only ones that do a women's fantasy camp, you're also getting not necessarily Red Sox fans at your camps. Yeah. You got back into playing soccer a couple of years ago. And we play in leagues that are open to all levels of play. I've connected with organizations that do like pickup, but will also like teach you. So like it's this really huge place of camaraderie, especially in the women's leagues. And like that's like the huge part of it is like I don't have to go spend the amount of money I know you guys spend on fantasy camp and only get a week out of it. I get to spend, you know, maybe a couple $100 and I get, you know, 2 months out of playing with these girls. You know, I live in the Ann Arbor area, so of course it gets a little cold.
Yeah.
But because of the interest in recreational adult leagues up here, I actually can play soccer year round.
Wow. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think camaraderie and community are the huge aspects of sport, especially for women and non-binary people. You know, I've played in co-ed leagues before. And I don't like it because I feel like I'm just playing in a men's league. But to be able to be accepted in a women's league, and that it's camaraderie and community, and knowing that like my teammates have my back and they'll show me, you know, if I don't know how to do something, they'll show me. I've played in leagues. Again, nobody's ever set foot on a pitch. They wanted to do something that was going to help them, you know, maybe meet people, maybe not speak very good English because they just immigrated to the US. And we're literally like, okay, like this is how you throw the ball in, and you've got to keep your feet on the ground, and you mess up. And, you know, in a regular game, it goes to the other team. But we'll stop the refs and be like, hey, like, let us explain what she did wrong. And like let her do it again. And both teams on the field are like, yes, like we want to teach her so she gets better. And yeah, it's this camaraderie and community you're capable of creating. And all you necessarily have in common is you like the game.
Mm-hmm. We saw you have memberships available for the IWBC, so people can do that. What else can people do to get involved?
Yeah, so if you check out the website at iwbc.org, you can see what events we may have coming up. You can join, you can donate. If you have ideas and you want to check out, I think it's our archives page has a form where you can help us keep our resource pages up to date. Let us know if there are programs that you may be interested in hosting or seeing, and we can kind of work with you like that. So that's how Double A and I got introduced. So I was like, yeah, we've got this resource page on podcasts. I didn't know about yours, but you let me know about it. We get it on there.
Yes, thank you so much.
To it.
I feel very honored. That was very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. So, on our archives page now, if you go to our podcast resource page, you can see the unofficial Fantasy Campers podcast now. And that's we're never going to know all of the information. So we really do want to connect with this community to be like, what is out there? What are we missing? What is stuff that what resources can we get to you that's not necessarily going to cause like a lot of work for one of our volunteers? You can volunteer to work on one of our committees. We have a museum committee. We've got a finance committee, a marketing committee. Like we are doing these. We plan events. A lot of our events have moved online because it connects with a lot more people. So we've had a pretty consistent book club or author talk for the last couple of years. We've hosted our own podcast. We've done a conversation series that's available on our YouTube channel. We try to do little things. You'll know about this from attending Founders Day, but we did come say thank you or congratulations to the IWBC for making it to 10 years. Those all go up. You guys can even still today be a part of that if you want to. We've also done a campaign where, we want to meet our community. We want to meet all of these different women or people that are involved with women's baseball or women in baseball. Yeah, there's so many things that you can do. We're trying to get more talks. So I know that we've got a new talk coming the 12th, I believe it is, with Level Ump, which is an organization trying to get more women into umpiring. So there's so much to do. We have an events and news page on our website that keeps hot up. And we try to make sure that all of the information that we know about is also shared across all of our social platforms where we're not anything fancy. So, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and not much beyond that because we're not going to figure out like the technology of TikTok or algorithms in that way.
Yeah.
That I draw certain lines.
We do too.
Yes. That's Perry's great. And yeah, I mean, those are people that we've worked with that have gotten to work in kind of historically significant ways, and then continue because of the opportunities that they've been given to advocate for women and girls to continue to have those opportunities. But my favorite baseball movie is actually The Sandlot 2.
That one. Oh my gosh, I didn't know they made a sequel.
Yeah, so The Sandlot 2, I think it came out in 97 or 98.
Oh.
But it is actually about a group of girls that move in next door to the Sandlot and showing the boys that they can play with them all summer.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm so glad you told us. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's this group of girls that played softball. They've grown up playing softball, but they want to play on the Sandlot with the boys, and the boys try to stop them, and they show that they can play. And it's just this cute little, it's just as lovable as the first one, I think.
Wow.
And yeah, no, I had been listening to some of you guys' podcasts just to kind of see how things had kind of played out, and everybody was saying A League of Their Own. And don't get me wrong, it is in my top 3.
Right. Yes.
But The Sandlot 2 just has this really special place in my heart.
Wow. I'm excited. I'm gonna watch it. If we can get you download it. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's like every woman's story at fantasy camp.
And I think a lot of people don't know that there's a second one.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Wow. So much good information in this episode. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate everything you're doing, everything that everybody's doing at IWBC, because, we're just getting into like I don't want to say the mix, but we're just trying to start to like unearth all of the women over 100 something years playing baseball. And like you say, people are like, women, baseball, what's the big deal? Like, I don't get it. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway.
Yeah. It's far more than 100 years, I can tell.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
And I'm training today. Well, thank you so much for being on. This was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I got to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm just seriously going to watch CLA too. I'm serious. After I join, I'm going to go to my...
There you go.
And look. All right. Well, this is signing off, and nice to talk to you, Kate.